Hi, I'm Chris Mslelecki, Senior Digital Copy Editor for DIA. Today, it's my pleasure to welcome Staci MacDonald into the DIA Media booth at our DIA Global Annual Meeting 2022 in Chicago.
Thank you.
Staci serves as Vice President of Scientific Operations at Celerion, an early clinical research service company that combines medical expertise, clinical operations experience, and scientific excellence. So Staci, welcome. First of all, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to be here.
Would you please give us a brief overview of your work at Celerion?
Yeah, certainly. So I've been with Celerion for over 25 years. I have done primarily clinical research and have just worked my way up through the company. I'm a pharmacist by training, so I was in the pharmacy, the clinical pharmacy, dispensing drugs for several years. And then really for the last 15 years, I've done global clinical operations and systems.
So we're here in Chicago at the Global Annual Meeting 2022. Why? Why are you here?
It was time to come back. It was time to come back. I think networking in person has been missed for the last couple of years. So we're here really to network with sponsors. So our sponsors are pharmaceutical companies, and then also to kind of network with vendors and see what's out there, how technology is changing, how different vendors can help service and fast forward clinical research to get data to clients faster.
Excellent, and that's a great introduction to really the conversation that I'd like to drive us toward today. We're here to talk about digitalization and how digitalization has improved both the clinical data aspect of clinical research and the patient experience in clinical research. So let's go back to COVID and kind of look at COVID as a reset button. COVID either accelerated or forced the industry into implementing decentralized clinical trials.
Absolutely.
They were on their way. The future maybe got here a little faster than we had thought.
Certainly did.
Progress, very little progress comes without presenting new challenges. And one of the challenges of moving to a more remote, virtual, decentralized clinical trial model is the implementation of the technology needed to change that model. Viva Systems did a study that found that 50% of sponsors and CROs say that one of their biggest challenges with decentralized trials is the extra burden that technology puts on their patients. So as a result, companies are now looking to expand beyond decentralization, developing digital strategies that simultaneously improve the data sharing and patient experience. Technologies that create a seamless continuum of data that sponsors, CROs, the research sites, patients, and the regulators can simultaneously and seamlessly access. That sounds like great news. Why?
Well, I think it's made all of us sit back and think about things from a bigger picture and from just more of a real-time picture. It used to be that you could run a clinical trial, you could get your data and present it. And now what the expectation is really in this new digital world and just in general is as you're collecting data, being able to see it real time and then also give the final result. So it's making us do things faster. And it's also making us do things in a manner of doing more real-time QC. You know, are you sure the data is right at that point in time, and not going back and having all the rework cycles that really caused a lot of issue. Paper had rework cycles, and so digitization makes you or allows you to really do real-time rechecks as you enter the data. So it takes out a lot of extra steps that were happening manually. So it's given us a huge opportunity to improve timelines.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Data captured in these patient-facing applications is now collected and captured in such a way that it can be fed back into the beginning of the clinical research cycle. And just me personally, this is where this conversation really gets exciting. We've seen scientists designing phase 2, phase 3 clinical trials in consultation with patients. And that's wonderful and that's good news. And I don't mean to put that aside lightly. But now we're also seeing scientists designing phase 2 and phase 3 clinical trials in consultation with payers or health systems, and saying, so what evidence do you need to see at the end of this cycle that would make you more comfortable approving this product and pulling it into your formulary or your health system? We can also take that data and feed it back into the research and use it to refine the patient populations in these clinical trials. Narrower patient populations, more accurate product labels, all to the benefit of the patient. And where drug development was once a straight line with go, no-go points between phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, it's now becoming more of a loop.
Absolutely.
Where, right. The research industry using technology to simultaneously make the patient experience and the data experience better is what we're calling in shorthand a digital virtuous loop of data. So let's talk about that. Going back to COVID as the reset button, how did Celerion typically enroll and manage patient engagement pre-COVID?
Well, pre-COVID, we probably used the typical traditional things, traditional media, and face-to-face visits. We did a lot of just traditional things. And I think when the world kind of just turned upside down, we paused for about 8 weeks of enrollment, but within 8 weeks, we were back to having participants on site in our facilities, running clinical trials. So we had about an 8-week hiatus, but it looked very different. It looked different, and it also looked very different because clients and sponsors now couldn't come on site and monitor their studies. You know, you were used to having monitors in your facilities nonstop, and now there's no travel. So with no travel, we had to have digital resources so we could share the data and that they could monitor remotely. So we were able to turn on remote monitoring almost instantly using Viva and being able to use their monitoring workflows in SiteVault. And so it overnight allowed access. There were some challenges with how do you now get the data? How do you scan the data? How do you make the data so that the monitors know exactly what they're looking at? Because before you could have face-to-face interactions and have discussions, you'd wheel a cart of data into the room and you would go through it, and now there was no wheeling. You would just give them a password and say go for it. So it was a very different world, and I think there was definitely a learning curve in there, but it was forced. You know, no one had an option, so they couldn't say, oh, I really like paper. Now it was, here it is. And so I think we've learned lots from that. So from the monitor and the sponsor side, it was really good. From the participant side, phase 1 is a little different because you still have to have participants in-house to actually give them the drug, do a blood draw. You can't do those remotely. But there are several things that we could do and that we were doing. So eConsent is one. So being able to do an eConsent and send the consent to a participant prior to them coming to the facility, that has been very, very beneficial. And one of the options that we used or started using about a year ago was Viva eConsent. And that was, it is a absolute game changer. It's a game changer from a paper perspective, but also just from a transparency. Monitors can log in at any point in time, see who has been consented, and then really participants can see that information themselves too. So it has been an evolution, some good things and bad things, but you're right, the silver lining is it forced digital to happen significantly faster than it would have in the traditional paradigm.
Okay. Would you like to share anything else about how eConsent works now from the patient or data experience?
Yeah, I would love to. So we knew the transition was not going to be significantly hard. You know, people are used to having smartphones and signing things on their phones all the time. So we thought from a participant adoptability perspective it would happen. We thought from a staff perspective, we're used to doing, electronic data capture, so that would be okay. And from a monitor perspective, they're used to looking at some things online. What we didn't expect though, and everybody, I think if you would ask those 3 different groups, everybody's had a very positive experience, but the most positive has been the participant.
Excellent.
They have not having to take around a piece of paper or a packet. These consents are 20 plus pages long. and carry that around with them for the next week or month or year.
Oh my goodness.
Is like crazy. So now they have access to that on their phone at any point in time. We also share key study documents with them on their phone also. So we used to hand them all this paper. So the participant feedback was, the adoption was very high, but what they can now do with having something on their phone versus a piece of paper and have that access to that information, their study schedules on there, their meals are on there. So that has been the most surprisingly positive
excellent
information that we had. So
positive surprises are always very nice.
Yes, it was a bonus for sure. And the rest of it's been fine too. From a monitor perspective, the feedback has been very positive. It's allowed them to monitor more efficiently because they don't have to be on site for certain things. So there's definitely been some efficiencies. And really from the site side, I think the consent, there's a little more work going up front, but the back end of having to track down paper documents and share those documents at the right time and having those available, it goes away because everybody has access now at their fingertips. So
excellent. Any other feedback you'd like to share from patients or site staff about their use of eConsent?
I think, talking about participant burden, and how many people have a smartphone and have access to it, I still think that that's a challenge that we're going to have to address. Right now we are at about an 8% paper rate. So 92% are doing electronic, but we still have this 8% that's a real portion. And so I think we're going to have to figure out how to solve for that. So,
wow.
Does that make you have an iPad ready for participants, so that they can still do the digital experience, but it's not their own device? So talking about right now we're using a bring your own device, but can we provide devices? So there's still a little bit of work to do, and I think we've got some opportunity, but we've got digital data now and metrics to look at and really look at it and see where the gaps are. But I do think technology and participants is still a gap.
Excellent, thank you. And this is a great time now to turn this conversation to look forward. In this digital virtuous loop, what other opportunities do you see to make data sharing and the patient experience simultaneously even better?
Well, I think how I had mentioned, you walked a cart of data into a room. We're now just giving them a password, a monitor or a participant password, and they really have to navigate what's out there, like how much is out there. So I think being able to think about all of this digital data now, we really need some dashboards so that people can queue in and say, oh, I have 100 consents to review, or I have 1 consent to sign or 4 consents to sign, and making it really easy so that they instantly can know what they have to do. Now it's a little, you kind of make them dig. They have to go through several layers of how many documents are in here. So I think that there's definitely some room that we can improve on that. And I think just continuing to make things easier for people. So just having them not think about it, reminders that are going to pop up on their phone when they have a protocol procedure or an event, or your fasting requirement starts now. I think there's lots of fun ways that we can continue to get participants engaged and make their lives easier and make it easier to do a clinical trial.
Well, it never dawned on me that a simple reminder, your fasting starts now, is really part of clinical research. It really can be that simple and basic, and yet that complicated and impactful.
Right.
2 years from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 5 years from now, what are we talking about in this field? What can our viewers or our listeners, what do you think we're going to see happen in this digital data patient engagement space over the next, say, 3 to 5 years?
Well, what we've done is we've digitized data, but we haven't really changed. You talked about a parallel or a process that went from start to finish, and now how many of these things could we be doing in parallel?
Right.
And really with digital data now, we should be shrinking our timelines. I mean, across the board, everything we do, we should be shrinking those timelines. And so I think that's what we're going to continue to do, is look at how can you recruit faster? Can you hone in on the right participants or the right patients faster by using the technology that you have, doing searches on using your EMRs to go through and search for the right patient profile. And then even on the data side, why does it take a month to database lock? Why can we not lock the database as soon as that last visit's done? doing some of that. So I think the time is going to be the biggest thing.
Excellent.
And then I think the quality of the data, going back and saying, where are there issues, and can we be smarter in technology and correct those at the source or at the time of collection instead of waiting downstream and coming back in edits and data queries.
Where will the biggest obstacles be in the next 3 to 5 years? Without naming names.
Yeah, no, the biggest obstacles I honestly think is there are so many digital platform technologies, and everybody's solving pieces of that technology. And so today, as a CRO, you have to use multiple technologies, and it's going to be integrating them into one final source.
Yeah.
So I think that honestly is going to be the biggest thing. We know how to do digital now. We know it works. We've proved it. But everybody's had their niche market.
Right.
And so how do you pull all that data together in an integrated fashion as effectively as you can? I think the integration is going to be the hardest thing.
Because there are more data sources now too.
Significantly more.
And it's not all formatted nicely.
Right. No. Similarly, yeah. So I really think that there's an opportunity there to do things. We're asking, we're talking about participant burden. So we're saying, enter your diary here, now do a questionnaire here. And so they're also burdened with multiple technical solutions that we've given them, and really building it into one platform for a participant or for a patient is going to be what we should be doing.
That's an excellent phrase. We've burdened them with technical solutions. That's a great way to close this interview. Staci, these are all our questions for today. Thank you for being such a great interview.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for taking time to speak with us, and best of luck. I look forward to speaking to you again in 3 to 5 years, and we can review this conversation and look at the progress that we've made.
Absolutely, likewise. And thanks to DIA for hosting this. Having it back in person, honestly, has been amazing. So it was time.
Thank you. We're very grateful too. For DIA, I'm Chris M. Slowacki. Thank you.